In this week's episode, I make these super swanky shelves for my gym. They hold the whiteboards, the markers, the rags, the spray bottles, your phone, your jacket, all the things that you use while you're at the gym. And we go through a little bit of prototyping and learning how to make this design even better. The rough requirements of the project are, I don't want it to have any sort of like super sharp edges. I want everything to be kind of soft and bright to match the kind of aesthetic and branding of the gym. I also need to include this whiteboard, which is, I don't know exactly how big, about the size of a sheet of paper, a towel, this spray bottle for some sanitizer for wiping off the equipment, and a marker to coincide with said whiteboard. I want to put a spot for like somebody's cell phone and a water bottle, and then I also want to add some way to incorporate some hooks. That way people can hook like a bag or a jacket to it, so that way there isn't stuff all over the floor, and it just keeps the gym nice and organized. The original blade that came with this miter saw is looking pretty rough these days. I have done quite a bit of cutting with it, so I went ahead and I bought a new blade, and I got one that's designed for like finished wood. Ash is really hard, so I wanted a good fresh blade so that I get nice clean cuts on this. Ultimately, I need to make, I think it's 8 of these or so, but I'm gonna make 1, maybe 2 of them to start out. I'm gonna then take those to the gym and install them, and then we're gonna try to live with it for a little bit before we go ahead and make all of them, because we might find some sort of other use or other situation in which they something needs changed, and it'd be stupid. Even though I bought enough material to make all of them right now, I'm gonna hold off on making them because it's hard to know exactly what's gonna happen. Pro tip, make one and like make sure it works first before you make all of them, even though it would be more efficient to cut them all at once. I want it to be kind of like a 2-tier situation, so there'll be a lower shelf and an upper shelf. I don't have an exact inspiration, but I'm kind of going for like Japanese tea cabinet kind of vibe, like long, low, minimal, kind of subtle design. So I want to try to like have this smaller shelf. I don't know exactly how tall that's going to be yet. I think this one's probably gonna end up a little bit shorter too, so it's like steps in, like maybe a couple inches shorter, 14 inches for the bottom one. I want to put a subtle curve on the front of these things. I just don't want anything to be super square. It just doesn't really fit the aesthetic of what I'm going for. But the problem is making things with curves accurately and cleanly is quite difficult. I think I have an idea on how I can do this cleanly, because my first thought was I could just take like a thin piece of wood, curve it, draw an arc, and then cut it out on the bandsaw, but I don't have an edge sander or like a big heavy duty sander of any kind really. So I'm not gonna be able to smooth that out, and the bandsaw, that blade's pretty bad. It's just not the right tool for it. I have palm routers, I can do that. I don't know what the radius for this is going to be, but I know that it's going to be a rather large radius. So my thought, just as a test, is I'm gonna take this long stick of wood, I'm going to drill a hole in the end that my Pico pencil fits into, and then I'm going to take the other end of it and screw it onto this 2x4, and then that way, with the pencil in the other end, I'll be able to draw kind of a big curve, and then I can line this up square to the table, center align it with the piece of wood, test how I feel about the arc. If I think it's too big or too small, I can adjust this length by moving the screw. And then once I have an idea of what the radius of the arc is, I can rebuild a jig like this that'll hold my router, and then I'll be able to just, I won't be able to go the whole way through it theoretically, but then if I have a clean edge, I can bandsaw the waste away, and then I can come back with a flush trim bit And that, I think, will work. I created a router jig by drilling a hole and mounting a palm router into a piece of plywood. Then I screwed that piece of plywood to another board. I made it so the inside bit of the router is exactly 4 feet from the center of this screw point. So I have a 4-foot radius arc. I then went ahead and I found the center of the table just to give me something to reference. And I put a mark on the center of this side and the center of this side, putting the center of my pivot in line with that. Then I can take my workpiece and I can line it up like so. And then I can set my router in the center of that, and I can even butt up my board right against the bit there. And then what I'm going to do is give myself a pencil mark on the bench to mark where that itself is. And now, swing this back over to the side, set it down. I'm going to use the good old-fashioned blue tape and CA glue trick to fasten my board firmly to my bench, because I don't have a great way to hold the piece otherwise, which I don't love that part of this design, but I only have to do this a couple times. I'm kind of terrified, but like in theory it should work. If it's not the most precise thing, that's okay. I've taken my time as far as getting everything in line, but I'm sure it's off, 30-second here, 30-second there, and it stacks up to being a little bit wonky, but we're making do with what we have. I can't find my activator, so we're kind of shooting from the hip here. I'll have to just let this dry for a second. It only takes a minute or two, I believe. That is really smooth, really turned out nice. I realized before I can flush trim the second half of the big shelf, I want to do the same kind of curvy architecture to the bottom shelf. So I have to do that one before I take this jig apart, because I have to actually take the jig apart so that I can use the router, because I don't have a second base for that router and I only have one router. Small shop problems. Time for the next way in which I could ruin this whole project and have to start over. The next step is I want to put a groove for an expo marker, just so it doesn't roll around. And I've got a little bullnose bit. I forget what these things are called. Little round over groover bit. Now I want to put the marker right there. So we'll figure out about the center of that. I gave everything a light sand real quick just to get the burn marks off of the roundovers. That bit is getting a little bit dull, so I guess I'll have to get a new one soon. I started to lay out a little bit of where the vertical pieces are gonna go, because they're gonna sit like this. This top piece is gonna sit like this. And Bob's your uncle, we got ourselves a shelf. I still have to I'm gonna put a little piece in the middle. That'll be part that actually screws it into the wall. But first I want to attach these parts, the verticals, to the bottom half. We're going to use screws and plugs to attach these things. I could do some kind of crazy sliding dovetail thing, but to be honest with you, it's just not really worth it for this kind of a project. Screws and plugs will look great and it'll work just fine. That's pretty sweet looking. This is sort of the gist of it. We're gonna knock down the little plugs and sand those flush. I'm also gonna add a strip in here on the back so that we have some way to attach it. I forgot to add that before assembling the thing. I just got overzealous. So add a strip on the back, grind that down, sand the whole thing, and then I got a clear spray lacquer. I think that'll probably be best to keep it away from moisture and sweat and all of those goodies. I went ahead and I installed this in the gym. It's been a couple of weeks now since I wrapped this thing up, and the overall consensus is people seem to really like it. But I wanted to use that sort of hive mind of letting everybody in the gym kind of get to use it to sort out any issues before we go ahead and make the rest of them. One of the first things that was called out is I designed it for the whiteboards to go vertically, and almost immediately somebody wanted to go horizontally. So I made a modification here on the prototype to make that go horizontal as well as vertical. The other complaint, or critique rather, would be to add more hooks. So instead of just the one hook, I'm going to add a second hook. So there'll be two side to side, as well as a side hook for those rags. So once it's all wet and stuff, it can hang from the side and not just be folded up all neatly like that. I made a little indent in the back where the holes are because the wall anchors were sticking out a little bit proud of the drywall, so it was sitting not quite even. So I wanted to go ahead and address that. That's the kind of little detail I don't think anybody else even noticed, but that's okay. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys are curious and from the Pittsburgh South Hills area, I'll leave info down below for NoBe Fit, the gym that these are going in. So if you want to check them out on the socials or come work out with us, I will leave that there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.